competencies of emotional intelligence. The first three focus on self-management, and those are self-awareness, self-regulation, and self-motivation. Those are the dimensions that help us relate to ourselves, because we need to understand ourselves, right, emotionally, so that we can work with others' emotions. So there's first that, it's almost looking internally. And the second three, empathy and effective relationships, but the underlying competency there is social skill. The second two basically concern a person's ability to manage his or her relationships with others. The first three focus internally, how we relate to ourselves, and the last two focus on how, inshallah, we relate to others. So let's go with the first one, which is self-awareness. So self-awareness is the cornerstone, right? It's the foundation that supports all the other emotional intelligence competencies. And it comes first for a very simple reason, because if we don't know ourselves and what we are feeling, and we don't know how to channel and manage our own emotions, how can we possibly know or understand somebody else's and how they feel, and of course, how to work with them? So self-awareness is what drives us and what we are passionate about. The more we know about ourselves, the better we're able to control and choose what kind of behaviors we will display in a work setting. Have you heard of the term, blind love or blind hate? That happens when we are not aware of our own emotions, because without self-awareness, not only we are not aware of our emotions, we are not aware of the magnitude to which situations can provoke us in different situations or activate those feelings. How angry are we going to be? How passionate are we going to be? Right? So, without self-awareness, our emotions can blind us and guide us to do things or become people that we never intended to. That's why in the English language, we have those terms, right? Blind love, blind rage. You've seen them. Let's now define self-awareness more explicitly. When we talk about self-awareness, it's the ability to recognize and understand one's own moods, emotions, and drives, as well as their effects on others. So people with so the hallmarks of self-awareness are people who are emotionally self-aware, people who engage in a realistic self-assessment, and by the grace of Allah, as a result of that, develop more confidence in their ability to control their emotions, right? So people with strong awareness are neither overly critical nor unrealistically hopeful. That's what we found. And they tend to be honest, even candid with themselves and with others. And very often, you will see these people, they have almost a self-deprecating kind of humor. Um, so these kind of people, let's say I am somebody who knows that I tend to get stressed when we have, deadlines, tight deadlines. So if I'm somebody who is self-aware, that what I am going to do is I'm going to plan my time carefully, and so that get my work done in advance, so that I don't put myself in a situation where now I am stressed. We have those, the adrenaline is pumping up, and I tend to be very abrupt and even acerbic and in my relations with other people. So the example I want to use here is that of Omar radiallahu anh. Omar was, as we know, very passionate, and and but Omar had some very endearing features. And one of the habits he had developed, for example, was at the end of every day, he would critique himself. And we noticed that in people in
Sorry,
self-awareness.
Dr. Sorry, Dr. Beacom. Your phone's ringing again.
Excuse me?
Your phone was ringing.
My phone is ringing. I have to stop my phone. I don't know why I do that to myself. I actually know why that happened. Thank you so much. It's because I teach a class at 8 o'clock in the morning. So
Okay.
I'm awake.
Okay.
I like to forget. I apologize, please. Yeah, I thought you were not hearing me. That's okay.
Oh,
Shukran.
yeah,
Remind me
that's
to disable it.
okay, will
So,
do.
so Omar radiallahu anh needs to practice self-awareness. And one of the things that I like about Omar radiallahu anh, many things, but one of the things that sometimes he was not aware of the effect that he had on other people. And there was a time when some companions actually told him that. And he started crying. Omar, he was so sincere. He didn't realize, that some people actually lived in fear of him. And I won't go into the details of that whole situation. But Omar radiallahu anh used to say that somebody who critiques me offers me a treasure, right? Like the most valuable treasure. And this is a hallmark. You see that second point right there, realistic self-assessment. Not only did he critique himself, but he welcomed critique from others, right? It's like now we call it 360-degree feedback, right? Some of you may know what I'm talking about in the business world. He welcomed feedback from others, so that by the grace of Allah, he would become more aware of the kind of person that he was. So, how do we develop self-awareness? We develop self-awareness, I've already talked about it. One is self-critiquing. The more we know about ourselves, the better we are able to control and choose what kind of behaviors we will display in a work setting. Some of us, that when we get critiqued by other people, we take it personally. And you've seen people like that. And they get very upset. And I have seen people who stop talking to other people for decades, even though they are brothers and sisters. Children don't talk to their parents. Parents don't talk to their children. At work, one doesn't talk to one's boss because one does not, like Omar radiallahu anh, welcome criticism, right? So the more we know about ourselves, especially if we have constructive criticism, right? We're studying ourselves, we're accepting constructive criticism from others, the better we are able to control and choose what kind of behaviors we will display in a work setting. By paying attention to our emotions, they can provide us with key information about responses to challenging situations. The whole idea here is you have to be tuned in to your emotions. You have to listen to yourself. You have to, and I find one of the ways that after prayer, right, instead of rushing out of the masjid, if you just sit down, especially Salatul Isha, right, or even if you're praying Salatul Tahajjud in the middle of the night, as Quran Murad says in one of his books, when you're close to Allah, closer to Allah, and you reflect on yourself. And you don't just reflect on yourself, you make a conscious decision to improve yourself. You don't it's a work, it's a long-term work, isn't it? right? It's a long-term work, but if one works at it little by little by the grace of Allah, and there's a lot of research to show that one can study the boat and one can improve ourselves. There's a lot of anecdotal as well as empirical evidence to show that this actually works. But again, for the purpose of this lecture, I'm not going to go